Greetings, denizens of the Empire. It's Jabari here. Among the many notable practices carried out that distinguishes human beings from all other creatures is our tendency to honor, and for lack of a better word, dispose of the dead. Throughout history, many human societies have developed a wide plethora of ways to accomplish these tasks, from cremation and burial to more elaborate methods like sending their corpses off on boats or planting them among the roots of trees as an offering to nature. However, there are very few methods of laying our dead ancestors to rest that excite as much emotion or curiosity as the practice of mummification. Additionally, there are very few examples of mummification that we discuss aside from the sophisticated method used on the pharaohs of ancient Egypt and Nubia. Today, we will discuss a few examples of African mummies that existed in places outside of the Nile Valley. Mummification is the practice of preserving human remains in such a way as to prevent them from decomposing or otherwise being destroyed by the elements or scavenging wildlife. Contrary to popular belief, mummification by artificial human intervention is not the only method to accomplish this. Numerous examples of naturally mummified bodies exist throughout the world. The bog bodies of Europe present one example of this, in which victims of human sacrifice were thrown into the many peat bogs of northern Europe. Due to the year-round cool temperatures and the antibacterial nature of acidic tannins in the waters, these bodies persisted in various states of preservation throughout history, some dating to several thousands of years old. The child mummies of the Andes Mountains are perhaps the most striking examples of mummification to date, as some are so well preserved that they can actually be mistaken for living people simply having a nap. In fact, this isn't too far from reality. Like the aforementioned bog bodies, those in the Andes Mountains were victims of human sacrifice. This was accomplished by bringing them into a deep slumber by intoxication and leaving them to meet their demise by way of hypothermia and the freezing temperatures of the Andean mountaintops. These frigid temperatures then subsequently preserved the bodies in much the same way as we utilize freezers and refrigerators today for our meats. Additionally, the thin air of these high altitudes slowed the decomposition process due to the lack of oxygen for bacteria to thrive on. These bodies were exclusively those of children and have been preserved for over 500 years. Comparatively speaking, Africa has very few mummies outside of the Nile Valley. This may be due to the fact that Africa rests almost exclusively in the tropics. Hot temperatures and wet weather are not the best combination for preserving human cadavers. However, there are some regions of Africa where the climatic conditions are ideal. The Sahara is the most apparent of these, but several regions within southern Africa present favorable conditions as well. The Tuli mummy of northeastern Botswana was found near a cliff, which proved to be instrumental in preserving it through a process of natural mummification. The hot and dry conditions and the fine sands also contributed to these ideal conditions. However, natural mummification is a process that happens by chance or by deliberately taking advantage of the climatic conditions of a specific region, and as far as we know, there is no direct evidence that indicates that the Tuli mummy was intentionally preserved by humans. The Egyptians are perhaps the most widely known creators of artificial mummies. Much debate exists about the racial identity of Egyptian people, and while race is a social construct with many fuzzy lines in between the definitions, it is generally accepted that many mummies of ancient Egypt were firmly within the black category.
Hell yeah, that's right. I tell them haters all the time that the Egyptians was black, but they do nothing but hide the truth. They pasty behinds even blew up the nose on the Sphinx, because it was too Negroid for them.
Yeah, right. Typical blacks always trying to claim my Aryan creations over your own. The Egyptians were obviously white, man, until the Caucasoid Sand niggers took over.
You're both missing the point, actually. I'm not trying to claim that the Egyptians were black, nor am I claiming they were white. What I'm saying is that the Egyptians were not one uniform race. Their race was heavily dependent on the specific region within Egypt and the time period in question. This is evident in the fact that they were ruled by the Greeks and Romans, both of which were what we consider here in America to be white, even if Jada Pinkett Smith doesn't seem to agree. They were also ruled by the Kushites, who were most certainly what we consider to be black, and then later the Arabs. And of course, the indigenous Egyptians themselves, who were somewhere in between and both ends of the scale in regards to race. We can see this reflected in the artwork and with the focus of this video, the mummies, which come in all varieties of phenotypes. However, Mr. Bigot, I'm sorry to disappoint you, I do have some bad news for you. The oldest artificially mummified human being ever discovered anywhere was a black child around 2 years of age. This black toddler, known as the Tashewanat mummy or infant mummy, wasn't even Egyptian either. The remains of this child were found in the Uwan Muhugiag rock shelter in what is now Libya, far, far away from Egypt, and dates back to around 5600 BCE, or 1000 years older than any mummies found anywhere in Egypt. The remains were found in the fetal position in a sack made of antelope skin, stuffed with layers of leaves, and like the aforementioned Thule mummy, an ostrich shell necklace was found around its neck. The internal organs were removed through a surgical procedure not unlike that found among the mummies of Egypt, and it is believed that this tradition may actually be where it all started. However, moving even farther still, all the way to the opposite end of the continent, we find another truly black African mummy. The Kuga mummy was discovered in a cave in the Eastern Cape Province, South Africa, in the year 1999. Analysis of the remains determined that it was that of a 30 to 40-year-old male of a very short stature, measuring only 145 centimeters or 4 foot 7/6 inches in height. However, it is important to note that he was measured from his fetal burial position to minimize disturbance or damage of the remains. It was also determined that he was a sand hunter-gatherer, and as such, the traditional clans that inhabit the area had considerable say as to how the remains were to be handled. While the body was allowed to be studied by scientists, the indigenous people had the final say in what could be done with the body and where its final resting place would be after the studies were concluded. Considerable amounts of skin and soft tissue were present at the site, and the body owes its mummification in part to the cool and dry conditions of the region and the cave, or climatic conditions similar to those in the tombs of the infamous Egyptian mummies. However, the Kuga mummy did not owe its excellent state of preservation to the climatic conditions alone, but direct human intervention also played a considerable role. When a human body decomposes, the most volatile region is the torso, owing to the many bacteria present in the internal organs, as well as the gases produced, which subsequently attract insects and scavengers that are drawn to the scent of carrion. The people who mummified this cadaver seem to have been very well aware of this fact, as the body was covered from pelvis to skull in a dense layer of leaves, or specifically the leaves of the Bufane disticha plant. This plant, locally called gifbol or ischwe, is a well-known medicinal herb with many uses among the traditional populations of the region. The remarkable state of preservation of the skin of the mummy may very well be a result of this herbal leaf layer. And speaking of herbs, maybe you should consider trying some other traditional Southern African medicinal herbs like kana, or those from West Africa like akuama, or if you're feeling even more adventurous, maybe even try some from Polynesia like kava, or my personal favorite from Southeast Asia. I've been using Happy Hippo Herbal's products for nearly 2 years now, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that they have literally made my life better. I cannot even begin to tell you how immensely they've helped with my levels of focus, relaxation, energy, and peace of mind. You can order a free sample pack if you want to see for yourself by simply following the link down below, and if you are happy with these wonderful traditional medicinal herbs, you can get 15% off all future purchases by using my personal discount code FN10. So, In addition to the aforementioned ichtwe leaves, fibers of the Cypress textilis were bound around the feet. The body was positioned against the back wall of the cave underneath a painted stone, lying on its side with its head pointing to the east. Strings of beads were found around the neck of the mummy and shells lying near the head. Leaves taken from the site were radiocarbon dated to around 20 CE, or in other words, this man may very well have died within the same decade as Jesus Christ. The cause of death of the Cougar man is not known, as his body bore no evidence of wounds, scarifications, piercings, tattoos, or disease aside from a pelvic fracture that may very well have happened during the excavation process and an amputated finger on his left hand. However, the finger amputation bore evidence of healing, so it was clear that it happened during his lifetime. Additionally, finger amputations are a traditional practice carried out on the San children even to the present day, a clear indicator that their spiritual practices are at least as old as Christianity. I think it's important to note the similarities between the Cougar mummy and the Tashwanat mummy. Both of these African mummies were preserved in cool, dry caves in the fetal position and covered in leaves. It is also important to note that neither of these two mummies are anywhere near one another, being separated by several thousands of miles. It is very likely that these are just mere coincidences or cultural relics that were preserved by prehistoric human populations from times immemorial. Who's really to say? Perhaps in the future, we can connect the dots, but until then, we can only guess. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. For sources, check out my website, linked below. If you'd like to support future projects, you can do so there as well, or by clicking the join button below, or by becoming a patron. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching as usual, and always remember, we don't come from nothing.